It started with a ping. Just one notification on my phone. You're invited to Nova's 30th birthday gala. Theme, Diamonds and Dreams. My sister's smile sparkled beside my mother's. A caption read, "Can't wait to celebrate life." I stared at it for a long time, because that message changed everything for me. It reminded me of the day I learned what family really meant, and what love was worth when you had to beg for it. Most people think betrayal happens once, but mine started long before that party, and ended with something I still can't forgive. You see, they spent $180,000 celebrating life, and I was fighting to save my daughter's life. I thought mothers were supposed to protect their children, but that year I learned some protect their image instead. If you've ever looked at your family and felt like an outsider in your own bloodline, stay with me, because this story isn't about money. It's about what happens when the people who should have saved you chose their reputation instead. I grew up as the shadow child, the one who learned early that love had a ranking system, and I wasn't at the top. My mother lived for what people said about her. Her hair was always perfect, her smile always rehearsed. She measured her worth in parties, dresses, and compliments, and she measured ours, her daughters, in how well we made her look. Nova was the golden one, the favorite. Even as kids, she got the big birthday cakes, the new dresses, the attention. I got hand-me-downs and polite claps. She got cameras, I got chores. At 15, I stopped competing. I told myself, it's fine, I'll build my own life. But deep down, every time I saw my mother hug Nova like she was the only child she had, something in me cracked a little more. Still, I loved them. Family was family, right? That's what I kept telling myself, even when the proof said otherwise. When I had Sophia, I thought things would change. Mother held her once and said, "She's cute, like Nova was." And for a moment, I believed maybe this little girl could melt the frost between us. I was wrong, because when my mother called one afternoon, her voice bright and proud, saying, "Mary, we're spending $180,000 on Nova's 30th birthday. It's going to be magical." I smiled, not out of envy, but because I still believed she'd help when it really mattered. I just didn't know that moment was coming sooner than anyone expected. I remember the smell first. Hospitals all smell the same, like cold metal, bleach, and fear. I used to walk past that pediatric wing without ever thinking twice, but that day, it felt like the hallway was swallowing me whole. Sophia's tiny fingers were looped around mine as we waited in the doctor's office. Her legs dangled off the exam table, swinging like she was bored, not sick. She kept tracing circles on my hand, whispering, "Mommy, can we go home after this? I wanna draw." "Of course, baby," I said. I smiled. I always smiled around her, even when I was falling apart. The door opened, and the doctor walked in, clipboard in hand, eyes too gentle. That's when I knew. He didn't sit down right away. He sighed. That kind of sigh people take before saying something that changes everything. "Mary," he began softly, "we got the results back. It's not just an infection." The room blurred. I remember the hum of the air conditioner, the tick of his pen against the folder. He said words I didn't fully understand: degenerative, progressive, urgent treatment. All I could hear was urgent. And then, "It's treatable, but the medication and therapy will be expensive. Around $80,000 to $90,000. $80,000. It felt like someone had kicked the air out of my chest. I tried to speak, but the words got stuck behind a wall of panic. Sophia just looked at me, swinging her legs, humming softly to herself, unaware that her life had just split in two, before and after. When we left the hospital, the world felt louder. Cars honking, people laughing, the smell of coffee, everything normal. Except for me. I was walking through the same world, but I didn't belong in it anymore. That night, I sat beside Sophia's bed and watched her sleep, her small chest rising and falling. The cartoon blanket she insisted on using even when it was too hot. She looked peaceful. I wasn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I took out my laptop and started searching. Treatments, hospitals, prices, loans. Every website I opened felt heavier than the last. Every number looked impossible. I called my bank the next morning. They denied me. Single income, no collateral, the woman said politely, like she was talking about weather. I sold my jewelry. I called 3 old friends. I tried applying for medical aid programs. Some said waitlisted. Some said not eligible. Every rejection chipped away at something inside me. But I never let Sophia see that. Every night, I'd tuck her in and whisper, "Mommy's gonna fix this, baby. You'll see." And she'd nod, sleepy-eyed, whispering back, "I know you will. You always do." She believed in me completely, and that belief was both beautiful and cruel. Weeks passed. Her condition got worse. She started missing school. Her laugh, the one that used to echo through our small apartment, became softer. Some nights she couldn't sleep from the pain, so we'd stay up together, drawing or reading stories. Her favorite was The Little Prince. She'd point to the stars in the pictures and say, "Mommy, if I ever go up there, you'll still look for me, right?" And I'd smile, always smiling, because that's what mothers do when their hearts are breaking. Bills kept piling up. The doctors stopped calling because they already knew my answer. I'm trying. One night, after she finally fell asleep, I sat on the kitchen floor with my phone in hand. It was almost midnight. I'd gone through every name in my contacts, every number that could possibly help. There was only one left. One I didn't want to call. My mother. I stared at her number on the screen for a long time. I hadn't spoken to her properly in months, not since she'd bragged about Nova's latest vacation while I was behind on rent. But desperation has a way of swallowing pride. And in that moment, I wasn't her daughter. I was a mother begging for her child's life. I almost didn't press call. But then Sophia stirred in her sleep, coughed, and whimpered softly. That sound broke me. I wiped my face, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "She's your mom. She'll understand. She has to." The line rang once, twice. Then she answered, her voice perfectly composed as always. "Mary, it's late. Is everything okay?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out at first. Then I broke. "Mom," I whispered, "Sophia's sick. It's serious. The treatment, it's expensive. Please, I need help. I'll pay you back, please." Silence. A long, cold silence that stretched into eternity. Then her voice came back, calm, detached. "Oh, Mary, I'm so sorry, darling, but this is really bad timing. We're already planning Nova's birthday. You know how much goes into these things." My chest went numb. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just sat there, listening to her talk about catering and photographers as my daughter slept in the next room, her tiny heartbeat fighting to stay. After she hung up, I sat there for hours. The phone screen went black. The world felt smaller, quieter, colder. I looked at Sophia's drawing pinned on the fridge, stick figures of us holding hands under a sun. She'd written, "Mommy and me forever." I pressed my forehead against it and whispered, "I promise, baby, I'm not done trying." But deep down, I already knew. There was only one person left to ask. The woman who gave me life. To save my child's. The day I went to my mother's house, it smelled like perfume, champagne, and new money. Even before I reached the door, I could hear laughter echoing from the backyard. The kind of laughter that only exists in houses where nothing bad ever happens. A white banner stretched across the driveway. Happy 30th Nova. Caterers carried trays of crystal glasses. A florist was unloading boxes of orchids. Everything gleamed. Everything sparkled. Everything screamed too late. I shouldn't have gone. Part of me knew what would happen, but the other part, the mother part, kept whispering, what if she says yes? So I went. When I stepped inside, the air conditioning hit me like ice. The marble floor gleamed like water. I wiped my palms on my jeans and rehearsed the words in my head one more time. Just ask. Keep it calm. Don't cry. My mother appeared at the top of the stairs, perfectly dressed in a cream suit, a champagne flute in hand. Mary, she said, surprised. What are you doing here, sweetheart? You should have called. Her tone, sweet, polite, like we were strangers meeting at a brunch. I tried, I said quietly. You didn't pick up. She descended the stairs slowly, every movement graceful, rehearsed. Behind her, Nova was directing two decorators, telling them where to hang the lights. When she saw me, she smiled the kind of smile people give when they think pity counts as love. Oh my God, Mary. You came. Don't tell me you finally got time off work. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, no, I came because my daughter might die. But all that came out was, I need to talk to Mom. Alone. Nova looked confused for a moment, then shrugged and went back to her decorations. My mother guided me into her office, a room I'd never truly been welcome in. It was spotless, lined with awards and family photos. None of me. None of Sophia. The only trace of us in that house was the echo of my own heartbeat. She sat behind her desk. Now tell me, darling, what's wrong? I opened my mouth, and the practiced sentences fell apart. All the composure I'd built crumbled in a single breath. Mom, I whispered. Sophia's sick. Really sick. Her expression froze for half a second, then softened mechanically. Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Kids catch everything these days. It's not that kind of sick, I said. My throat tightened. She needs treatment, soon. It's curable, but it's expensive. They said around 80 to 90,000. I've sold everything I can. I just need. I stopped because my voice broke. I just need your help. She looked down at her nails, perfectly manicured. Then she sighed, long and slow, as if I'd asked her to move a mountain. Mary, she said gently, you can't just drop things like this on people. We're in the middle of planning the event. The guests are confirmed, deposits paid. You know how these things work. Deposits, guests, events. Words that had no place in a sentence about my child's heartbeat. I'm not asking for much, I said. I'll pay you back. I swear. Mom, please. You're the only one who can do this. She shook her head slightly, almost apologetic. You'll figure something out. You always do. That line hit me harder than anything, because it wasn't cruelty, it was dismissal. A lifetime of being the one who figures it out. Mom, she's dying. I didn't mean to say it so loudly, but it ripped out of me before I could stop it. Her eyes flicked toward the door, nervous. Lower your voice. People will hear. People will hear. That's what she cared about. Tears blurred my vision. I stepped closer, my hands trembling. She's 6 years old. She still sleeps with her stuffed rabbit. She still thinks stars are angels. And I'm losing her, Mom. Please, please help me. Her lips pressed together. She looked at the wall clock. We can't cancel everything now, she said finally, her voice colder. It's tomorrow. Do you know how bad that would look? How bad? I laughed through tears. You're worried about how it looks? She stood, the conversation already over in her mind. Mary, I know this is hard, but I can't just throw away months of planning. You should have come to me sooner. I came the minute I found out. I shouted. My voice echoed against the glass cabinets. She flinched, more out of annoyance than pain. Stop being dramatic, she said quietly. I've raised 2 daughters, and I know how emotional you get. This isn't helping anyone. 2 daughters. She said it like we were equals, like Nova and I lived on the same planet. Something in me snapped. Nova gets a 6-tier cake and fireworks, and I can't even get my daughter a chance to live. You think that's fair? Life isn't fair, she replied. Her tone was so calm it made me sick. For a moment, all I could hear was the music starting outside, someone testing speakers. A cheerful pop song floated through the window, mixing with the sound of my own heart breaking. I turned away, because I couldn't let her see me crumble. I stared at the photo on her desk, my mother and sister at some gala, both beaming. In the corner of the frame, barely visible, was me, cut off mid-shoulder. Even in pictures, I was an afterthought. When I faced her again, the tears were gone. What replaced them wasn't anger. It was clarity. Okay, I said softly. I understand. She seemed relieved. Good. I knew you'd be reasonable. I smiled, a hollow, weightless thing. Reasonable. Sure. The reasonable daughter. The forgotten one. Before I left, I said one last thing. I hope the party's perfect, Mom. She touched my arm lightly. It will be, darling. You'll see. I walked out before she could say another word. As I passed the hallway, Nova was laughing with the decorators, holding up a sparkling silver dress. When she saw my face, her smile faltered. Hey, you okay? I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to say, you're the reason Mom can't help. But I didn't. I just said, yeah, have a great birthday. Then I left. The air outside was hot and heavy, but I couldn't feel it. I drove home in silence, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. By the time I reached the apartment, the sun was setting, and Sophia was waiting by the window, holding her rabbit. Mommy, did Grandma say yes? She asked. I forced a smile. She said she'll try. She nodded like she believed me. She always believed me. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat beside her bed and watched the faint rise and fall of her chest. I thought about balloons floating under chandeliers, about the sound of laughter spilling out of that mansion while my baby's heartbeat slowed. I wanted to hate my mother, but mostly I felt empty, like I'd finally reached the bottom of something I'd been falling through my whole life. When the clock struck midnight, I realized something I'd never dared to admit before. My mother didn't see me as a daughter. She saw me as an inconvenience that refused to disappear. That night, something in me died quietly, the part that still hoped she'd ever change. She chose balloons over breath. And that night, I stopped being her daughter. The next morning smelled like rain and hospital disinfectant. Sophia's room was quiet except for the rhythmic beep of the monitor, steady, mechanical, almost mocking. I sat in the chair beside her bed, my head resting on her blanket, fingers brushing her tiny hand. Her skin was warm, but she was so weak now that even breathing looked like work. Mommy, she whispered, eyes fluttering open. I'm tired. I know, baby, I said softly, pushing her hair from her face. You can rest for a little bit. Mommy's right here. Her lips curved into the faintest smile before her eyes drifted closed again. I watched the monitor blink, watched the line rise and fall, steady, then hesitant, then steady again. In another part of town, music started. At first it was faint, a beat carried by the wind through the open hospital window. But I knew that rhythm. I knew that song. It was the opening number for Nova's birthday. Because, of course, my mother's party would be on schedule. Every event she planned ran perfectly. No delays, no excuses. While I sat in a sterile hospital room praying for my daughter's life, my family was dancing under chandeliers. I pulled out my phone. No messages. No calls. Nothing. The same silence that had followed me my whole life. At exactly 6 p.m., I imagined my mother standing in front of her guests, glass of champagne in hand, announcing, "To Nova, my shining star!" And the crowd applauding, cameras flashing, music swelling. In the hospital, a nurse came in quietly, adjusting Sophia's 4. She smiled kindly, but I could see pity in her eyes. "Her vitals are fluctuating," she said gently. "The doctor will be here soon." Fluctuating. Such a soft word for falling apart. I nodded, my voice gone. Sophia stirred again, her voice small. "Mommy, will Grandma come?" I froze. How do you tell a 6-year-old that her grandmother chose a party over her? "She's busy right now, sweetheart," I whispered. "But she loves you, okay?" Sophia smiled weakly. "Okay." And just like that, she forgave a woman who never earned it. Outside the window, thunder rolled, deep, distant. But it wasn't thunder. It was fireworks. I knew that sound, because my mother had once said, "We'll end Nova's birthday with fireworks over the lake. It'll be magical." Magical. Somewhere across the city, guests were clapping, phones recording, champagne spilling on marble floors. And here, in this cold room, my daughter's heartbeat faltered under the glow of fluorescent lights. The nurse left. It was just us again, the beeps, the wind, and the faraway laughter echoing through the night. I held Sophia's hand tighter. "Mommy's here," I whispered. "I'm not going anywhere." Her breathing slowed. The machine beeped irregularly. "Mommy," she said again, barely audible. "Yes, baby. I'm tired." Her voice cracked, softer than a sigh. And then, quieter. "Can I go now?" The world froze. I wanted to scream no, to hold her there with sheer will, to drag her back into this world where she belonged. But her eyes, God, her eyes, they were peaceful. I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "Okay, baby, you can rest now." She smiled. Just a tiny, beautiful smile. Then the monitor flatlined. The sound, one long, endless note, sliced through the air, merging with a distant burst of fireworks. Boom. Beep. Silence. I stared at the monitor, at the still line, at her chest that no longer moved. The world outside was celebrating while mine collapsed. I remember the nurse rushing in, pressing buttons, calling for help. I remember voices shouting, hands moving, machines humming. But I already knew. I knew the moment her hand went limp in mine. When the doctor placed a hand on my shoulder and said, "I'm so sorry," I didn't cry. I just sat there, empty, because tears couldn't bring her back. And neither could the $180,000 worth of fireworks painting the night sky over my mother's mansion. They pronounced the time of death. 8:47 p.m. At that exact moment, my mother was probably cutting a cake. 8 tiers tall, covered in gold leaf and sugar roses. Guests cheering, music swelling, cameras flashing, everyone shouting, "Make a wish." And me. I was holding my daughter's body, whispering, "You were my only wish." The hospital staff asked if I wanted to call someone. I said no, because there was no one left to call. I sat there for hours, unable to move. The fireworks kept going, each explosion lighting up the clouds, like the sky itself was mocking me. At one point, a nurse gently touched my arm. "They're ready to move her," she said softly. I shook my head. Not yet. So I stayed, until the fireworks ended, until the laughter died down, until there was only silence. And in that silence, I made a promise. Not revenge, not anger, just a quiet vow to never forget this night. The night the sky celebrated while my heart stopped beating. The night my mother proved that love could be conditional and that mine never was. When I finally stood, my legs were numb. I kissed Sophia's forehead one last time. Her skin was cooling. I wrapped her rabbit in her arms, the way she liked. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "I tried." I left the hospital at dawn. The city was asleep, the sky pale gray. As I walked to the parking lot, I saw faint remnants of fireworks drifting away in the distance, thin trails of smoke over the lake. My mother's party was over, and so was everything I'd ever believed about family. I got into the car, started the engine, and for a moment just sat there. No sound, no music, just silence. Then I whispered, to no one, "She chose balloons over coffins." And I meant it, because while my daughter was taking her last breath, my mother was raising a glass under a shower of gold confetti. That night would haunt me for years, not because of what she did, but because of what she didn't. She didn't call. She didn't ask. She didn't come. Even when I called her after, even when I told her, "Sophia's gone," she said quietly, "Oh, that's unfortunate, unfortunate," like a canceled delivery. Then she added, "I'll send flowers." Flowers. I never saw them. She never came to the funeral. And maybe that was better, because if she had, I might have asked her how the fireworks looked that night. The night my world ended. It rained on the day we buried Sophia. The kind of slow, gray rain that feels personal, as if the sky itself was grieving. The cemetery was almost empty. Just me, the priest, 2 nurses from the hospital who came out of kindness, and an empty chair that should have been hers. I remember the sound of the shovel hitting the wet ground. A dull thud. Over and over. Like a heartbeat fading away. Sophia's coffin was small, too small, white with a pink ribbon tied around it because the funeral home said something soft might make it easier. As if color could soften the sound of a mother breaking. I kept my eyes on that ribbon because if I looked away, I'd see what wasn't there. I'd see the empty rows where family should have been. My mother's chair, untouched by the rain. My sister's name card, blowing away in the wind. No one came. The priest spoke gently, his words a blur through the storm. I only caught fragments, peace, light, eternal rest. I wanted to scream. There was nothing peaceful about it. Nothing light. Just mud and cold and the echo of the words, curable if treated early. When it was over, the others left. I stayed, because I didn't know where else to go. For a long time, it was just me and the rain. And then my phone buzzed. For a second, my heart leapt. Maybe it was her. Maybe she'd finally realized what she'd done. Maybe she was coming. But when I looked at the screen, it was just a message. "Mom, sorry, can't make it. The party ran late. I'll visit next week." I read it once, then twice. The words blurred as rain hit the screen. Sorry, can't make it. The party ran late. That's what my daughter's life had been reduced to, a scheduling conflict. I wanted to throw the phone into the mud, but I couldn't, because if I did, it would mean admitting I still cared. That somewhere deep down, I still hoped she'd come running. Instead, I typed back, "Don't bother. She's already gone." I never hit send. What was the point? No message could reach someone who'd already chosen silence over love. I turned off the phone and slipped it into my coat pocket. Then I knelt by Sophia's grave, tracing her name with my fingers. Sophia Grace Miller. Born June 14th. Died August 3rd. 6 years. 6 years of laughter, stories, tiny shoes, glitter drawings on the walls. All gone. I pressed my forehead against the cold marble. "Baby," I whispered, I'm so sorry. I tried. I tried so hard. And for the first time since the hospital, I let myself fall apart. The sobs came out raw, ugly, shaking through my whole body. I didn't care that it was raining. I didn't care who saw. Every tear was a memory. The first time she said, "Mommy," the way she'd run into my arms after school, the way she'd whisper goodnight to her stuffed rabbit. I cried until my chest hurt, until the world blurred into gray and water and pain. When I finally stopped, I realized I couldn't feel my hands. They were cold, numb, trembling. So was I. That's when I understood something I hadn't before. There's a moment in grief when pain becomes too heavy to carry, so your body hides it. It goes quiet, not because it's healed, but because it's too broken to keep screaming. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't even breathing right. Just still. The rain eased. The world looked washed out and empty. I placed Sophia's rabbit on the grave, the one she used to sleep with every night. It was soaked, but it didn't matter. "That's your forever friend now," I whispered. "He'll keep you safe." As I stood up, I looked one last time at the empty chair behind me. No flowers. No family. No mother. Only me, the shadow child, burying the only person who ever loved me without condition. When I finally left the cemetery, I didn't look back. Because there was nothing left to look at. That night, I sat in the dark apartment, staring at Sophia's drawings on the fridge. Stick figures. Hearts. Me plus mommy. The last piece of our life together. My phone buzzed again. Another message. "Nova, hey, I just heard. I'm so sorry, sis. Mom's a wreck. We didn't know how bad it was." I stared at the screen for a long time. A wreck. Funny how people suddenly find grief when it's convenient. I didn't reply. I deleted the message. Because sympathy that arrives late isn't sympathy, it's guilt disguised as kindness. I sat there all night, listening to the rain fade into silence. The world was quiet again. Too quiet. In that stillness, I realized what I'd buried that day wasn't just my daughter. It was every last illusion I had about love, family, forgiveness. They say grief changes you. They're wrong. It doesn't change you. It strips you bare. It shows you who you really are when there's nothing left to lose. And that night, standing in the ruins of my own life, I became someone else. Someone who remembered. Every word. Every silence. Every choice. I buried my daughter that day, and the last piece of my heart with her. After the funeral, silence became my only language. I stopped answering calls. Stopped checking social media. Stopped existing in the world that had already forgotten me. Days bled into nights, and nights stretched into something longer. Grief's kind of time, where the hours don't move unless they hurt. At first, I couldn't even step out of bed. The smallest things triggered memories. The smell of shampoo that reminded me of her hair, the faint jingle of a cartoon theme from a neighbor's TV. I used to flinch, then cry, then just stare until it stopped mattering. People tell you time heals, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal, it hardens. It takes your open wounds and turns them into scars you can't feel anymore. 3 months after Sophia's death, I packed up our apartment. Every toy, every drawing, every dress. Some I donated. Some I couldn't. Her little pink shoes stayed on the shelf, untouched. When I moved into a smaller place across town, I carried only one box with me, her picture, her hospital bills, and the rabbit she was buried with. The bills weren't paid off yet. They'd follow me like ghosts for years. But I kept them on purpose. Reminders. Not of her death, but of what it cost. Of who chose not to help. In the beginning, I thought I hated my mother. But hate takes energy, and I didn't have any left. So it turned into something colder. Distance. I didn't call her. Didn't visit. Didn't even answer when Nova texted on holidays. Eventually, they stopped trying. And that silence, that blessed, empty silence, became the first thing in years that actually felt like peace. By year 2, I forced myself back into work. The same old office, same old cubicle, same old fluorescent lights. But this time, I wasn't the same. I didn't talk much, didn't laugh at jokes, didn't join lunches or small talk. I just worked, mechanical, efficient, invisible. Every paycheck, I set aside a small amount into a savings account. Not for anything specific, just a habit, a ritual. Each transfer felt like a promise to myself. You'll never be that powerless again. Therapy helped, slowly, painfully. The counselor's room smelled like coffee and lavender. Sometimes I'd go weeks without speaking. Other times I'd talk until my throat ached. She once asked me, "What are you saving for?" I told her the truth. "I don't know yet, but I'll know when the time comes." She nodded like she understood, but I don't think she did, because I wasn't saving for things. I was saving for freedom, for closure. By year 3, I started writing again. Journals, mostly. Letters to Sophia that I'd never send. "Hi baby," one entry said. "Mommy got a new job today. I hope you're proud." Sometimes when I wrote, I'd imagine her voice answering back. Not as she was when she died, weak and tired, but bright, laughing, alive. Those letters became my therapy when words failed. They were the only conversations I still wanted to have. By year 4, I had rebuilt enough of myself to walk past playgrounds again. I still couldn't look too long, but at least I didn't break. I even bought a plant for the apartment, a little green fern that somehow survived my neglect. It became my test. If the fern lived, I was still capable of care. It lived. Somehow, so did I. My mother and Nova became whispers in the distance. Occasionally, I'd see news of them, a charity event, a vacation photo someone reposted. My mother still looked radiant. Nova still smiled like nothing in the world could touch her. Once, I saw a photo of the two of them holding champagne glasses, captioned, "Mother and daughter, unbreakable bond." I stared at it for a long time, not in anger, just disbelief, that they could go on pretending, that the world could still see them as good. Then I closed the app and never looked again. By year 5, life had turned quiet, stable even. I worked. I cooked simple meals. I saved. The apartment was small, but it was mine. And every morning, when sunlight hit Sophia's photo on the shelf, I'd whisper, "Good morning, baby." It didn't hurt as much anymore. It just existed, like a scar you can't feel but still trace sometimes. Sometimes I'd wonder if my mother ever thought about me, or her granddaughter. But then I'd remember the message she sent the day of the funeral. "Sorry, can't make it." And the wondering stopped. The silence between us grew roots. It wasn't just absence anymore. It was protection. I built a life in that silence. A life without her voice telling me I wasn't enough. A life without her approval hanging over every decision. And yet, no matter how many paychecks came and went, how many nights passed without tears, I never touched the savings account. Not once. It kept growing quietly, interest compounding, month after month, like a secret preparing itself for something inevitable. Sometimes I'd open my drawer and look at that one small box. Inside, Sophia's photo, her smile still sunshine bright, her last hospital bracelet, and those unpaid medical bills, folded and worn from handling. I'd run my fingers over the numbers, $87,412. Then whisper, "One day." I didn't know what that meant. Not exactly. But it felt like a prayer and a warning at the same time. Then one morning, 5 years, 2 months, and 11 days after the funeral, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. The screen flashed private caller. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it. I almost did. But something, maybe curiosity, maybe fate, made me answer. Hello. There was a pause. Then a voice I hadn't heard in half a decade. Mary. My stomach turned to ice. It was her. My mother Olivia. Older, tired, but unmistakably her. For 5 years, I'd lived with silence. Now it was cracking open again, and behind it, the sound of ghosts returning. Her voice trembled just slightly as she said, I need to talk to you. And that's when I realized. I didn't know what I was saving for, until the day my phone rang again. When I heard her voice after 5 years, it felt like a ghost had learned how to speak again. For a few seconds, I couldn't answer. I just listened, to the trembling, the hesitation, the way she said my name like she was testing if I'd hang up. Mary. Her voice was thinner now. Age. Stress. I couldn't tell. But it wasn't the same confident tone that once lectured me about appearances and duty. This one sounded fragile. I said her name flatly, like it was just another word. Olivia. There was a pause, long enough for me to hear her swallow. Then she exhaled shakily. I know it's been a while, she began. Too long. I wasn't sure you'd even pick up. I didn't respond. I just waited. When silence pressed too hard, she continued. Things have been difficult. The understatement of a lifetime. Then she said it, the part she'd rehearsed, probably for hours. I wouldn't be calling unless it was serious. I need your help. I remember looking around my apartment. Clean, quiet, steady. The plant on my windowsill had outgrown its pot. The air smelled like coffee and calm. For the first time in years, I had peace. And now, the woman who shattered it once was trying to claw her way back in. I said evenly, "What kind of help?" Her breath hitched. "It's money." I wouldn't ask, but there's no one else. There it was. 5 years of silence, broken not by apology, but by desperation. How much? I asked, already knowing this was going to hurt to hear. There was a pause, muffled whispering in the background, then her voice again, smaller now. About 120,000. I almost smiled. Almost. Because 5 years ago, 80,000 could have saved my daughter's life. Now, she wanted 120 to save herself. What happened? I asked, though my tone made it sound like I didn't really care. She sighed, shaky and embarrassed. Nova's husband left. Took everything. His company went under, and, well, your mother invested most of her savings into it. Her savings, I repeated, letting the words linger. The same savings she once said she couldn't touch to help me. Yes, my mother said softly. It's complicated, but everything's gone. The house, too. I'm staying with Nova right now, and we're trying to sort things out. But we need help, Mary. Please. She added the last word like it burned her throat. For a moment, I didn't speak. I wanted to memorize that sentence, every syllable of her voice shaking as she said please. It was the first time she had ever asked me for anything in my life. And it wasn't forgiveness. It was survival. Where's Nova? I asked. She's here. A small voice came on the line. Mary, hey. I know this is weird. We're really in trouble, okay? I wouldn't let Mom call you if it wasn't bad. Her voice cracked at the edges. Guilt, exhaustion, fear, and maybe a sliver of shame. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, letting their words sink in like warm water turning cold. They needed me. After years of pretending I didn't exist. After letting Sophia die without so much as showing up at her grave. After calling her death unfortunate. Now I was their only hope. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. Mary, my mother said again, uncertain. Are you still there? Yes, I said. My voice was calm. Too calm. So, can we meet? Please. Just to talk about it properly. I know how it sounds, but... All right, I interrupted. All right, she repeated, surprised. You'll meet. Yes, I said again. We'll talk. I could almost hear her relief through the phone. Oh, thank God. Thank you, Mary. I can't tell you how much. Tomorrow, I cut in. Noon. My lawyer's office. The pause on her end was sharp. Your lawyer? Yes. If we're discussing money, it should be handled properly. The silence that followed was thick. I could picture her frown, her lips tightening, that old instinct to control rising in her throat, but she couldn't afford it now. Of course, she finally said, her voice shaky again. That's fine. I could hear Nova whisper something in the background. Then my mother added, We'll be there. Good, I said. See you tomorrow. Then I hung up. No goodbye. No softness. Just quiet finality. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt or excitement, but because my mind replayed everything. The hospital room. Sophia's last breath. My mother's empty chair at the funeral. That text. Sorry, can't make it. The party ran late. And now, 5 years later, she needed me. I opened the drawer beside my bed. The small box was still there. I took out Sophia's photo, her bright little smile staring back at me, eternal, innocent. Then I unfolded the hospital bills, now yellowed around the edges. $87,412. That was the price of my daughter's life. And now, my mother wanted $120,000. I laughed softly, bitterly, not out of joy, but disbelief at how the universe circled back. I wasn't a woman built for revenge, but I was built for remembering. I spent years saving, not for wealth, but for this. For the moment the power shifted. The next morning, I arrived early at the lawyer's office, a quiet room overlooking the city. My attorney, Mr. Heller, had been my financial advisor for years. He didn't know the full story, only that I trusted him more than I'd ever trust blood. When my mother and sister walked in, it felt surreal. My mother looked smaller, thinner, her perfect hair dulled to gray. Nova's once glamorous confidence was replaced with the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. They looked human. For the first time in my life, they looked breakable. Mary, my mother said softly, smiling through nerves. You look well. I didn't smile back. Let's sit. They exchanged a glance but obeyed. Mr. Heller greeted them politely, then opened a folder. So, Mrs. Miller tells me you're here regarding a financial request? My mother nodded quickly. Yes, that's right. We're in a bit of a crisis. I wouldn't ask if it weren't serious. Mr. Heller turned to me. You're considering a loan? Yes, I said, voice steady. Under one condition. Nova frowned. Condition. I looked directly at my mother. Everything we agree to today will be in writing. Once the funds are transferred, you both sign a contract stating you will never contact me again. No calls, no messages, no visits. Nothing. Their faces froze. My mother blinked. Mary, that's extreme. You don't mean that. I do, I said calmly. You get what you want. And I get what I deserve. For a long time, no one spoke. Nova's eyes filled with tears. Mary, we're family. Family. I repeated softly. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. You remember that word now? My mother tried to regain control. Mary, I understand you're still hurt about the past, but this isn't the time. No, I interrupted. This is exactly the time. Her mouth shut. I leaned forward slightly, keeping my tone even, almost gentle. 5 years ago, I begged you for less than that. For 80,000. For your granddaughter's life. You said no, because a party deposit was non-refundable. Remember that. Her eyes dropped to the table. I remember, she whispered. Good, I said. Then you'll understand why this contract is necessary. Nova started crying quietly. My mother just stared at her hands. The lawyer slid the contract across the table. Everything is outlined clearly, he said professionally. Signatures here and here. My mother hesitated. You'll actually give us the money? Yes, I said. You'll have it within 24 hours of signing. It took everything in her to pick up the pen. Her hand trembled as she wrote her name, Olivia Carter. Then Nova signed beneath her. When the papers were done, I stood up. You'll have the transfer tomorrow, I said. After that, you'll never hear from me again. My mother looked up, her eyes wet but defiant. I don't understand you. I met her gaze for the first time since Sophia's funeral. I know, I said. You never did. Then I turned and left. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not victory, not closure, just weightlessness. The past had finally tilted. The child who once begged was now the one setting terms. And my mother didn't know yet, but I'd been waiting for this day for 5 years. The next morning felt too quiet. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from peace, but from waiting. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, staring at the document my lawyer had emailed me overnight. It was simple, clean, professional. A contract of permanent severance. If they signed, I'd wire the money, $120,000, into an escrow account. Once it cleared, they'd have what they needed. And I'd finally be free. I read it twice. Not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to feel the weight of every word. The undersigned agreed to forfeit all rights of contact, communication, and familial claim upon receipt of funds. There it was, my revenge in ink. No screaming, no plotting, no destruction. Just quiet, cold paperwork. At 11:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. They were here. The lawyer's office smelled like fresh paper and steel. It was too bright, too polished, like a place where emotions weren't supposed to exist. But today they would. When I walked in, my mother was already seated across the table. Her pearls were gone, her lipstick faint. The woman who once threw $180,000 parties now looked like she couldn't afford herself. Nova sat beside her, arms folded tightly. When she saw me, her jaw tightened, anger trying to mask embarrassment. I nodded politely to both. No warmth, no hostility, just formality. My lawyer, Mr. Heller, cleared his throat. Thank you all for coming. Mrs. Miller has prepared the necessary documentation to finalize this agreement. My mother straightened her posture, that old instinct flickering through, to appear composed even when falling apart. Before we begin, she said softly, I just want to thank you, Mary. You didn't have to do this. I met her eyes. You're right. I didn't. Her lips trembled, but she stayed silent. Mr. Heller laid the papers on the table. 3 copies. Neat. Precise. Final. This agreement, he said professionally, states that upon transfer of funds, both parties, Mrs. Olivia Carter and Ms. Nova Carter, relinquish all rights to contact Mrs. Mary Miller or interfere in her personal or professional life in any form. It is a complete and permanent separation. Olivia nodded numbly. Nova frowned. That's ridiculous, she said. You're our sister. You can't just... I can, I interrupted calmly. And I am. She turned to Mother. Mom, say something. My mother looked at me, desperate now. Mary, this isn't necessary. We're family. We made mistakes, but… Mistakes, I repeated quietly. That's what you call them? Her eyes dropped again. I leaned forward, folding my hands slowly on the table. I just want to make sure we all understand what's happening, I said. I'm giving you $120,000. No strings attached. But in return, you walk away. For good. You don't call, text, show up, or ask for more. Ever. Nova's voice broke. How can you be so cold? We're drowning, and you're sitting there acting like we're strangers. I turned my gaze toward her. Strangers don't abandon your dying child for a party. That hit her. She looked away, blinking hard. My mother whispered, Mary, please. Please what? I said softly. Please forget that I begged you for help while Sophia was hooked to machines. Please forget that I called you, crying in the hospital hallway, and you said, what was it again? I looked her dead in the eyes. You'll figure something out. My mother's face crumpled. I didn't mean. Yes, you did, I said. You always meant it when it was me. You always meant no. The room was silent. Only the faint ticking of the clock filled the air. I continued, voice calm but trembling under its own weight. You threw a party that night. You danced under fireworks while my daughter's heart stopped. You said you'd come to see her the next day. But she didn't have a next day, Mom. Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't stop. She asked for you. Her little voice, barely a whisper, she said, Where's Grandma? She promised balloons. Nova started crying openly. My mother's shoulders shook. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't want them to hear anger. I wanted them to hear truth. I told her you'd come soon, I said. That you were busy, but you'd be there. And when she closed her eyes that last time, I thought, maybe you'd call. Maybe you'd change your mind. But you didn't. I took a slow breath, steadying myself. At her funeral, there were 6 people, I said quietly. 6. And not one of them was her grandmother or her aunt. The tears on my mother's cheeks were silent now. Real, maybe, but too late. Nova reached for her hand, but my mother pulled away, ashamed. I leaned back. This isn't revenge, Mom. It's math. You couldn't pay to save her life, so now you're paying to leave mine. The words hung there like smoke. Not shouted, just spoken. And somehow that made them sharper. Mr. Heller slid the contract toward them again. Please sign here, he said gently. Olivia stared at it. Her hands trembled. This feels so final. It is, I said. Can't we talk about… No. She looked at me one last time, eyes wet, desperate to find the daughter she'd once ignored. But that daughter was gone. The woman sitting across from her had built herself from ashes. And this paper, was her monument. My mother finally picked up the pen. Her signature looked weak, hesitant, like she wanted to erase it as soon as it was written. Then Nova signed, sobbing quietly. When they were done, I stood up, took the folder, and closed it softly. I'll have the funds transferred within the hour, I said. Mr. Heller will confirm. Nova whispered, You hate us. I paused. No, I said, turning to leave. I just finally love myself more. But my mother's voice stopped me. Mary! I turned slightly, but didn't face her fully. Her voice was barely a whisper. I know nothing I say matters now. But I'm sorry. I looked at her, this fragile, ruined version of the woman who once ruled every room she entered. For a flicker of a second, I saw what could have been, a mother, not a judge. But then I remembered Sophia. Her smile. Her last words. And that flicker died. I used to wait for that apology, I said softly. But it's 5 years too late. My mother wiped her face, trembling. I'll never forgive myself, she whispered. I nodded once. Good. Then I walked out. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the street, breathing it in like it was the first breath of a new life. My phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Heller. Funds transferred successfully. That was it. Done. I opened my bag and pulled out the small photo of Sophia that I always carried. Her smile looked the same, bright, endless, untouched by cruelty. I did it, baby, I whispered. We're free. A tear rolled down my cheek, but it wasn't from pain this time. It was from release. I thought about what I just said inside, about money and leaving. It sounded harsh, but in truth, it wasn't about punishment. It was about peace. Because forgiveness doesn't always mean letting them back in. Sometimes it means locking the door quietly and keeping it locked forever. I looked up at the sky, pale and wide. For the first time since Sophia died, it didn't feel heavy. It just felt open. Back inside the office, my mother held the pen in her lap, staring at her shaking hands. It's strange how peace doesn't arrive like a sunrise. It doesn't come with music or fanfare or even clarity. It just seeps in. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about my mother in weeks. Her voice, her face, her endless judgments, they'd finally faded into the background noise of memory. What stayed was Sophia. Her laugh, her warmth, her love that asked for nothing and gave everything. I used to think healing would mean forgetting, but it doesn't. It means remembering without bleeding. It was early spring when I decided what to do with the rest of the money. The $120,000 was gone, but I had savings. Quiet, steady savings I'd built in silence for years. Money I thought I'd use one day to move, to start over. But starting over doesn't always mean leaving. Sometimes it means building something where the pain once lived. So I called the same hospital where Sophia took her last breath. A young administrator answered, cheerful and efficient. How can I help you today, ma'am? My name is Mary Miller, I said. I'd like to make a donation. A fund, actually. There was a pause, surprise, then interest. What kind of fund? For children who need medical treatment their parents can't afford, I said. And I want it named after my daughter. The Sophia Grace Fund. The words felt both heavy and light on my tongue, like a prayer that finally found its way home. A few weeks later, I visited the hospital. The lobby was brighter than I remembered. New paint, new faces. But the air still carried that quiet hum of hope and heartbreak, coexisting in every hallway. The administrator, Lena, met me with a warm smile. We've finalized everything, she said, handing me a small brass plaque. It read, The Sophia Grace Fund. For every child who deserves another chance. I traced the letters with my fingertips. It didn't erase the pain, but it turned it into something useful. As I walked past the pediatric wing, I heard laughter. Soft, tired laughter from a mother playing peekaboo with her little boy in a hospital bed. She looked exhausted but grateful. And for a moment, I saw myself. But this time, she wasn't alone. Someone had helped her. Sophia had helped her. Afterward, I drove to the cemetery. It was a quiet afternoon, the sky pale and forgiving. The grass around her grave was freshly cut. I knelt down and placed the plaque I'd brought, a small, simple thing that read, In loving memory of Sophia Grace Miller, the light that never went out. The wind picked up, gentle and cool. I closed my eyes and let it brush across my face. I did it, sweetheart, I whispered. Your name is going to help kids just like you. And no one can ever take that away. For a long time, I just sat there, talking to her the way I used to, about my day, about the hospital, about how proud I was of her. And even though there was no answer, I could feel her. Not as a ghost, not as a memory, but as peace. Before I left, I pulled out my phone. For years, I'd kept my mother's number saved, not to call, but because I couldn't bring myself to delete it. It felt like cutting the last thread of something I once believed in. But that day, standing by my daughter's grave, I finally hit delete. No anger, no tears, just release. And for the first time, I truly understood forgiveness. Not as acceptance, not as forgetting, but as letting go of the rope that's been burning your hands for years. A month later, the hospital sent me an email. The Sophia Grace Fund had already paid for 3 children's treatments. 3 kids were alive, laughing, recovering, growing, because of her. I printed the message and placed it inside Sophia's memory box, right next to her photograph and the old hospital bracelet I could never throw away. I whispered, "You saved them, baby." And in that moment, I felt her more alive than ever. Now, when I tell this story, I don't tell it to hurt anyone. I tell it to remind people that love and pain can grow from the same soil, and what you choose to water will decide who you become. My mother bought a birthday with $180,000. I bought peace with goodbye. That's all I ever needed. If you're listening to this, and you've ever begged for love that never came, if you've cried in silence waiting for someone's apology that never arrived, don't wait anymore. You can't build peace out of pain someone else gave you, but you can build peace around it. Forgiveness isn't about giving them another chance. It's about giving yourself one. Because at the end of the day, your healing doesn't need their permission. It just needs your decision. They bought a birthday with $180,000. I bought peace with goodbye. If you've ever begged for love that never came, don't wait for their apology. Build your peace instead. Nova whispered, "Mom, are you okay?" But my mother didn't answer. She just kept looking at the empty chair across from her, the place where her daughter had sat, calm and unreadable. And for the first time in her life, Olivia Carter realized something that money could never buy. The silence of someone who finally stopped needing you. You couldn't pay to save her life. So now you're paying to leave mine. And that was the last thing I ever said to my mother.